Trevor, Cameron, welcome to AI's Corner Office with Aviso and NYSE Floor Talk. It's great to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here.
So, according to a recent Gartner survey, agentic AI is the most interesting area of development in generative AI. How do you see the role of agentic AI evolving in today's business world, Trevor?
So we're seeing companies that are embracing AI head on. You go to AI first companies like DXC, Ivanti, whom we had the CEO on a while back. And we really see those companies as leapfrogging into the future and using AI to their competitive advantage. Really taking that tailwind of AI and moving forward. I'm perhaps aging myself a bit here, but I've seen the dot-com bust. I've seen the advent of the cloud, and there's always naysayers over there. But what I found is those companies that embraced it and took advantage of these unmistakable trends, really came out ahead, right? Like Salesforce and to a certain extent, Microsoft reinvented itself. I still remember when HP CIO told me that over his dead body would he implement the cloud. And HP now, of course, is an AI first company that works very closely with Aviso. So I think it's not a question of when or if, it's a question of a must-have. And what agentic workflows are doing for us and agentic AI is it's enabling us to really take the IP that exists in the company and essentially free that up, right? So help employees be better versions of themselves, take away the road to work that exists, and enables them to really focus on things that are of high impact, both for the company as well as themselves.
And Cameron, what do you think? What are your thoughts on agentic AI?
The interest in AI is broadening across the C-suite because they realize that this is a productivity enhancement. This is a customer experience enhancement. It's an employee experience enhancement. They see these things as a huge benefit because you turn a coder into a super coder. You turn a customer service agent into a super customer service agent. And the financials that flow behind that and the customer experience that flows behind that is really impactful for clients.
Now, with AI moving from pilot phases to full-scale deployment, how do you see organizations re-architecting their business models to integrate AI at the core? And what challenges do you anticipate as companies continue to scale these technologies?
Trevor kind of touched it earlier on clients making a choice to be AI first and go all in. But you referenced a Gartner study, BCG, McKinsey, Goldman Sachs. You can go through the list of very bright minds that believe that AI is going to be hugely impactful, but also that roughly in the BCG study, 22% of the clients have actually adopted a strategy and scaled it across their enterprise. Unfortunately, what that means is the other 78% have not quite yet. So what we're doing with our clients and for many clients is helping them on use case driven AI or agentic agents that allow them to scale, iterate, collaborate, test quickly, and then scale broadly, which is really making a difference both financially and customer experience wise for a lot of our clients.
Now, there's a lot of discussion around AI's transformative role in the customer experience, from personalization to fraud protection. Can you share how AI is currently reshaping customer interactions for your clients, and what kind of tangible results are you seeing, Cameron?
In one scenario, we're working with the Brussels tax department, and we're actually using AI agents to allow them to go through mountains, as you can imagine, with taxes around the appropriate season right now. There are mountains of data. It's very hard to respond. You're looking at thousands of documents. We're using AI agents to supercharge these customer service agents' ability to respond. For BMW, we actually have worked with BMW to provide a natural language avatar, essentially, that lives in the car with that driver. It learns their behavior. It gives them contextual responses based on where they are or where they're going. Something that really changes the experience of driving the ultimate driving machine. Finally, Equitable Holdings, again, a customer service example where we had a limited subset, 600 agents that we provided information out to, again, going into mountains of data to respond to clients. That scaled to 11,000 agents. The first iteration was 30 days. It scaled out to 11,000 agents over 12 months. That makes a meaningful impact for, in this case, Equitable Holdings. So there's some examples.
And how about you, Trevor?
I mean, when you look across the board, right? So, for example, with Cisco, right? Cisco's comment to me was the last time they had a transformation of this nature was when my teams at Salesforce sold them Salesforce. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but essentially what they're doing right now is they've realized that they spent the last 2 years, kicking the tires. And as Jeetu Patel, who's the head of product there, says, look, it's time to get off the shitter, right? We're the AI first. They've dived truly in. Some of the innovative ways that they're using us is this concept of an SE Avatar, right? That I talked about earlier. And what the SE Avatar does is it enables, they've hired about 1,000 to 2,000 young folks out of school, right out of university. And the ability to really onboard them over a period of time would typically take them a year, 2 years, or 3 years. But by giving them these avatars, whether it's a sales assistant or an onboarding assistant or an SE avatar, it enables that employee to take advantage of the captured IP that exists at Cisco, the IP that you typically see in a tenured engineer or in a tenured, individual salesperson. But it goes beyond that, right? It goes beyond the corpus because you're talking about 3 million pages or pretty much industry use cases across the board with a very complex number of SKUs and very heavy bill of materials, right? So the SE Avatar answers questions on the fly and enables folks to add value right out of the gate, right? So that's tremendous. If you're looking at Honeywell, Honeywell has cut down its account planning time from 32 hours to like 8 minutes. Vimal Kapoor talks about the fact that Aviso is enabling folks that are 1 or 2 years or 3 years out of school to have the same level of knowledge through our digital twins that folks have been there 10, 15 years. So when I look at these different use cases, as Cameron was alluding to what DXC is doing, across the board, it's incredible the kind of industries they're impacting, which would not usually be the usual suspects. And I'm seeing these industries, as they embrace it, really lead the charge, right? And I'm quite confident over the next 12 months we're going to see the impact in terms of top line, right? So. Which industries are you seeing that are being disrupted, right? I mean, there's obviously the usual suspects with high tech, et cetera, but we had one of the IPO companies, a construction company that's providing AI software for construction companies. We're seeing that space being disrupted. Yeah. We're seeing, old school brick and mortar type businesses being disrupted. What are you seeing out there, Sal?
I would draw a delineation between what I consider traditional disruption and people that are actually just getting huge lifts from productivity from the use of AI in very targeted outcome-based use cases. Aviso is a great example of that. We take a use case, which is sales, account planning, all around the sales process, and we structure the technology to be very effective with a large language model, with a small language model, whether the corpus is a broad swath of general information that you might find on the internet or a very tight swath of account information in the small language model that you use for accounts that you have, for example. Disruptive wise, I actually think it's going to be very fascinating in the tech services industry. And I say that because disruption to me is what takes an existing business model and turns it on its head. And my own view in the consulting and systems integration market, and we do a lot of very high-end engineering work. But there are many people that do masses of people. Think here, 80,000, 90,000 people that are doing traditional software development and maintenance. What we've found is in traditional software development and maintenance, we can make developers anywhere from 3 to 4 times more productive by the use of these technologies. And I think that's going to create a huge disruption across the software engineering lifecycle.
I think Cameron hit it on his head, right? I was talking to Jeetu the other day at Cisco, and he's predicting that 80% of the code that they write is going to be written by, agents or agentic, or folks using agents to augment their code writing, right? So when that takes place, I mean, we're looking at a whole paradigm shift in how we approach the industry, right? So, I think the productivity is going to be exponential especially in the services space, right? So.
Now, Cameron, looking at today's landscape, where do you see the biggest untapped opportunities for AI to drive real transformation?
Allowing clients to get started with a sound strategy, very detailed use cases, and outcomes they're driving is how this will scale broadly. What we see with clients is it is great to start small, think big, and then scale. This is an iterative process. It's a collaborative process with people that actually understand this isn't a tool or a technology. I do think that in a traditional frothy environment, which I would consider AI a somewhat frothy area, that means lots of private equity, lots of companies starting up with pieces, parts, tools. Those are interesting, but what matters is the experience and the people that don't care as much about the tools as they do in the outcome it's going to drive for the client and its ability to scale across the organization. So we feel we're somewhat unique coming at it from the perspective of we will use any technology that's out there. And if you look, a lot of the models underneath are Anthropic's quite good visually. Copilot's quite good code-wise. These are all different use cases. So I don't think the magic lies in the tooling. The magic lies in the experience and bringing the right tool to the job. And that's something that we do quite effectively for our clients.
Trevor, what are your thoughts?
What we've seen is the organizations that are most successful are those that have figured out the areas where they can get the maximum impact. When you're going through any large-scale transformation, you want your quick wins that kind of fuel the fire and the enthusiasm, and then go for the big swings of the fence, right? And if you look across the board, whether it's HP or you look at BMC, you got companies that typically have been pretty conservative in their digital transformation efforts, now realizing that they got this exponential growth and this exponential opportunity to transform themselves, right? So the tools will always be there. The question is, how do you adapt the tool that's best suited for your environment, right? Whether it's Anthropic or whether it's cloud or whether it's it's ChatGPT or OpenAI, we're agnostic. We do have a preference to open source models, and the reason for that is we think you need to be in control of your destiny, and we're big believers in you owning your IP and that IP not being shared with your competitors. So yes, Aviso has a preference for Llama 4, but we're agnostic, and we think it's going to be an interesting battle, shall we say, of the picks and shovels, and we're going to be that shopkeeper in the grand California data rush, AI rush, gold rush, who's going to help you choose the right tool for the right use case.
I do think actually the optionality point, this is the thing that in the start of very big movements that have changed, whether it be cloud, whether it be just the move to the web, there were so many examples that I'm sure you can look back at and I can look back at and say, wow, they picked a tool that turned out being the Betamax of the environment. I'm on FileNet for image. I've got a web server that's essentially turned into a Betamax type web server. So I do really think the optionality choice is important for clients right now.
Now, there's a lot of excitement around AI in the enterprise space. So for companies that are looking to embrace AI, what would be your advice on overcoming the hype and focusing on practical applications that deliver results? And what are some of the immediate benefits customers are experiencing with AI solutions, Cameron?
I guess my encouragement right now, as I said earlier, is this is not about tools or models, because those things will change over time. What is successful now may not be successful in 2 years. And when that happens in the tech industry, you actually end up on a platform that you can't find people to support, or people don't get the value out of. There's not investment going into it. So the optionality point is important for them, i.e. make sure that you can keep plugging pieces in that are the most effective at doing the job. My encouragement, our encouragement for clients is start very specifically on use cases and outcomes you're going to drive. Start small, iterate rapidly, and then scale broadly across the organization. that seems to be the best way for clients to start seeing not only results, but outcomes that then fuel the next, as you said earlier, Trevor, the next wave of here's how we're expanding that platform and portfolio.
Trevor, what's your advice?
Look, I'll put it this way, right? I think the question is understanding what the use cases are and understanding that LLMs are not a silver bullet and certainly not a white horse, white knight on a white horse, what do you want to call it, right? It's not the be all and the end all. And the reason I say that is the largest models we have today are trained on 20 to 30 trillion parameters. 20 to 30 trillion parameters. So you think of parameters, you think of tokens. Tokens are basically 3 bytes, right? So you're talking about 10 to the power of 14. So a 1 and then 14 zeros, right? So that's the extent of the knowledge on the internet. If Cameron and I would, or you and you, all three of us together, were to try and consume all that, it take us about 700 years, maybe, thereabouts, or maybe even more, right? But a 4-year-old child in the first 4 years takes in 2 megabytes per second through the optic nerves. In 4 years, they've lived 16,000 hours. 16,000 hours times 2 megabytes per second, what does that get you? 1 to the power of 14. So we're basically saying that the largest models today, trained on 20 to 30 trillion parameters, have the same level of knowledge that a 4-year-old child has absorbed in the first 4 years. What does that tell you? It tells you that these models are amazing, and these models use what's called reinforced learning and self-supervision to basically predict the next word or string of words. But you can't take a 4-dimensional world and compress it into 2-dimensional text. I mean, Byron did it really well. Shakespeare did it really well. Unfortunately, you can't bet your company on that, right? So where we're going is the next stage for us, which we find very exciting, is using, YouTube, using video, using real life experiences to take it to the next level. Unfortunately, if I were to take a pen right now and I would put my finger in it and I would ask Cameron which way, if I take my finger away, which way the pen's going to go, Cameron, there's a 50-50 chance. But 49 and 48, because he's going to choose to go right. So about 49-51 chance, right? Lots of probability, right? But it's impossible for the algo to tell me what the pixels are going to be and where that pen's going to fall. And that's the problem. So when people tell you AGI is around the corner and we're going to spend $1 trillion, you don't need to spend $1 trillion. DeepSeek showed us you can get creative with chain of thought and with a proper rewards type structure to get the same results, right? But the reality is we're in a really interesting time. We've taken Moore's law and thrown it out of the window. You got agents every 7 months doubling the output. At some point in time in the future, we're going to get there. But let's be circumspect and careful about what our expectations are. Otherwise, we're going to get disappointed.
All right. Well,
No one told me there was going to be so much math.
he's definitely an expert with math. Well, it's been really wonderful talking with both of you. Thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you very much, Judy.